additional video, you can see, you might have seen this already if you looked at my example. Here is my drawing for the project. So I drew a living room situation. The book I read, listened to on an audiobook, was Marie Kondo's The Art of Tidying Up. It's just a book about how to not hold on to objects and to feel free to toss them away, and try to make sure that the only stuff you're keeping is the stuff that you actually care about. So this is what I imagined when I heard her voice. I imagined a living room where she was sitting across from me, in a nice, clean, simplified, organized living room. So as you can see, I drew all these different shapes. I used pink, blue, brown, green, and silver. So I was above expectations on the rubric, and I'm going to talk about what I did here to help you out on your project. So first things first, notice how all my shapes are kind of like on a grid. That will make a lot of this easier. So before you start drawing, remember, this is for a project where you have to find the area of each shape you draw, including this background behind all the shapes. So I have to find the area of this brown and the area of this green. It's not the easiest thing. So notice how even though it might not look that good, the line of the couch between the seat and the back cushion is the same line as between the wall and the floor. And I did that on purpose so that way it made finding the area of those colors easier. I also decided to only use basic colors and use the same color repeatedly. And notice how I colored in on top of the bonsai tree, on top of the flowers, on top of the books. So even though they're in my drawing, I don't have to calculate the area of them separately because they're all green. All right. So be smart when you draw. Use simple shapes. Make sure that they're connected in a way where you can find the area of it. You might have to decrease your artistic ambitions in order to create a drawing where you can actually find the area of. So let's actually look at that. So I drew this, and then on the back, I went over, because you could see through the paper, I just drew the things without coloring it in of what I needed to find the area of. So if we look at this, right, if we look at one of the shelves, right, we have a rectangle and then two sectors, each are a quarter of a circle, and then two triangles underneath. Right, so I made sure I used shapes that I could find the area of. So a rectangle, easy, right? Just length times width. So 4 inches times 0.5 inches. And I was sure when I was drawing this, I used my ruler, and I included a printout ruler. I used a ruler so I could easily, I can make this math easier on myself. I'm not trying to draw something that's just a bit more than 3. I'm drawing it so it's perfectly 4, and then drawing it so it's perfectly half of an inch. I'm making this easy on myself. So area of a rectangle, 4 times a half, so that's 2 square inches. Triangle, right? I drew it on purpose so it had a 1/4 inch as one side, a 1/2 inch on the other, and because that's a right triangle, that means I could say this is the base and this is the height, right? Because they're perpendicular. If I had drawn another triangle that wasn't a right triangle, I would then have to draw it to make sure that the height is a nice number. So I just decided to draw a right triangle to make my life a little bit easier. And then for my sector, for my bookend, I could have drawn a very curvy shape, but I decided to draw a shape that I knew how to find the area of. And since this is a quarter of a circle, the formula I used was a quarter of the area of a circle, which is pi r squared, right? Pi r squared. And my radius was 0.5. So I plugged this all into the calculator and I got 0.20. Next shelf, again, I decided I wanted to draw a pot for the bonsai tree to go into. And instead of trying to make a complex shape that then I would need to then divide into other shapes, I drew a semicircle, a half a circle, which has the same radius 0.5 as the other one, but now we use 1/2 because that semicircle is 1/2 of the circle. So then we get something that's a different size, but still pretty much the same formula, right? Because that's how much of the circle we have, 1/2. For my parallelogram, right, I drew it using my ruler. I made sure that my height was a nice number, which is from the bottom to the top, and it has to be perpendicular. Don't be holding it like this where it's not perfectly at right angles. Make sure you hold it at a right angle, so that's the height. So I did 0.5 and 0.5 on purpose to get some nice numbers. We already did rectangle and triangle, right? Here's the seat cushion on the back. I drew it again with nice numbers, 3 and 1. So I got a nice number for the seat cushion. Now the question is, and this is going to be a part where people make some mistakes, I colored the wall green. This shape would not be fun to decompose. So instead, what I did, I said, right, I had this rectangle right here, right? I folded up the bottom. I have this rectangle, and then I took away pieces of it and changed it into a different color besides green. So my math for that became, my green rectangle was 6.25 inches right here, and then 11 inches along the bottom. So that entire rectangle, without the pieces taken away from it, was 68.75 inches. And then what I did in my work is I took that big rectangle, but then I said I needed to subtract a bookend, subtract another bookend, right? Subtract the shelf, subtract the triangle, subtract the triangle, subtract the semicircle pot that the bonsai went into, subtract the parallelograms, subtract the second shelf, subtract those other 2 triangles, subtract the back of the couch. I'm subtracting all those other things that I did not color green from the big rectangle that could have been all green, but I added the objects to. So that's an important step. I took the big green rectangle and subtracted all the things that are on top of the green, or are there instead of the green, to get how big my green is, right? And this is kind of for the point of the project. If we were designing backdrops, we would need to know how much paint to buy based on how much area to cover. So I had to do the same thing for the brown again, but we had to be careful because we had the 2 shelves plus the floor and then minus the 2 parts of the couch, right? So here we had just this part of the brown, right? Just this tiny skinny rectangle. And then the only parts I did not color brown was the seat cushion and then the part of the couch that holds the seat cushion. So I found those 2 areas. The bottom part of the couch was 2.5. The seat cushions of the couch was 4. And then that brown rectangle with everything there would have been 24.75. And then I added all the brown pieces together and I subtracted those parts of the couch to get how much brown I needed. All right. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about is how could you check your work? So what I did, right, I had 5 colors here. I added all of my 5 colors together and I got 93.5. I know I had a normal piece of printer paper, which is 8.5 times 11 inches. So I did that math, and I also got 93.5, which means I didn't overcount stuff. I didn't forget about any pieces because the paper is 93.5 square inches, and all of my individual colors add up to 93.5 inches. I'm good. I made sure I counted everything. And I tried to make sure my drawing was hopefully a bit more complicated than your drawing might be, right? I had objects that were overlapping. I had things I did not count because I just colored over them with green. They're in my picture, but I'm not counting them, and that's okay. I had more than enough colors, more than enough shapes. I'm going above and beyond the expectations so I can get that exceed grade in all of the parts on the rubric. So hopefully this video cleared up any questions that you might have had about it. You can see my example online where I even wrote down a paragraph of why I decided to draw the scene, and then a paragraph for one of each shape, right? We have to talk about a triangle. You might not have the same 4 triangles. You might have big and small. Just pick one triangle and then write down the steps you did. Pick one parallelogram, right? I have this parallelogram, but I also have this brown parallelogram. A rectangle is a parallelogram. I had another parallelogram because I had another rectangle. I had 2 pink rectangles, so 2 pink parallelograms down here, right? And then I had a trapezoid right here with the seat cushion. And then I had 1, 2, 3 sectors I could have described, but I just chose to describe the blue bookend. So hopefully you have more than enough to choose from. You need one of each of those shapes for the project, at least. So you need those shapes. So again, think of a scene that you could use that. Last year, a very popular scene was a barn scene from Animal Farm, right? Because you could say here's a rectangle and then the silo dome, right, for the barn thing could be the semicircle, and then you could draw like a roof on top of a barn as a trapezoid, and then like I don't know, I think people had a triangle door into the silo on a barn, or they had something else, right? They could have had a sector up here for the sun and then triangles as the rays. There's a lot of different ways to include these shapes to make a very simplistic drawing for the thing that you want. And remember, if we actually had a drama class or a drama after school club and we made backdrops, they need to be simple anyways because they're behind the people who are acting, right? They're not supposed to get the attention of the crowd. They're just supposed to be there to support the scene. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to me. We have our morning support hours. We have our class support hours that are in schedule with our support hours. So make sure that you reach out to me with any questions before it's too late and you can't reach out to me when you're working on it. Good luck.